Hey friends, we are Sarájanée and Annacrizelda, and this is Everything and No Less, the podcast where your favorite long distance best friends talk about everything from women's sports to Marvel movies to things we love, hate, and everything in between. Today, in episode 1, we're telling the story of our friendship. We start with our meet cute over 15 years ago and then discuss our long distance friendship over the years.
Yay.
So, let's start out by introducing each other. Sarájanée, I thought it would be fun if we did a little intro of each other.
Love that.
And I'll go first. So this is Sarájanée. She has a doctorate in history. She's been my best friend for over 15 years. Time flies. She was the maid of honor at my wedding, best maid of honor ever. She is my most cherished and lovely friend. She is funny. She is brilliant. She is everything. And I'm so lucky to have her.
That was so sweet. Now it's my turn. Let's see if I can try to do you justice. Annacrizelda is a Libra, a lawyer, an avid reader, a phenomenal show binger. Like, that's a skill if you all didn't know. Stylish, incredibly stylish, and my personal stylist. Thank you for all of the times that you answer my calls when I don't know what to wear. A darling dog mom, a comedian, very funny, and I think has a great sense of humor because she laughs at most, if not all of my jokes, which is just, a gift, a treasured gift, and a friend as she is. And maybe a Loki stan. Is that fair to say?
Oh, I stand.
We'll come back to that.
I do. I stand you.
Okay. But yes, my darling Annacrizelda, I don't know what I would do without you. I'm so glad to have you as a friend.
Yay. Great.
I feel like we should have written our meet cute down, like both of our versions of it, and given it to somebody else to read and see. I feel like it mostly agrees, but I just think the order of some events
Okay.
might be a little bit different. Like, in my mind, I walked across the University of Virginia's very hot campus because it was probably late August, early September for our political and social thought seminar. First walked in, I saw a lot of non-melanated faces, scanned pan to the left, and here is this stunning Asian American woman, stylish, everybody else is in the UVA polo kind of thing, and she's like, no, I have a cute outfit on. I go sit near her because just magnetic, something just calls me in. And I am minding my business. Maybe we smiled at each other. Maybe there was a hello. I don't really remember that part. But I'm minding my business, getting settled, waiting for class to start. Notice I have a hangnail. And so I pull out some clippers just to, again, take care of my little hangnail so I can focus on the content at hand. And this marvelous young woman turns around and asks me, do you have nail clippers on your keys? And I'm like, yes, who doesn't? And she's like, that's absurd. That's really ridiculous. And the rest is history. Here we are.
Yes, I do remember that version of events. I do want to point out that your version underscores the justification for you having a nail clipper on your keys, which I have recently apologized to you after 15 years of friendship. You were actually right. You do need a nail clipper on your keys. It is essential to moving around this world. But yeah, I remember walking into our very fancy, prestigious major seminar that first day and not knowing anybody and being like, this is really weird. It was also really quiet. People were not jovial. They were not conversing with one another. It was very quiet. I was like, oh man, these people are here to compete with one another.
Very serious.
Very serious. And I remember sitting down and I was like, this is very tense. This is very tense. And I'm sitting there and I'm terrified because I am the only, I think there were maybe 2 other people in that room that were not typical UVA frat sorority person. And I remember you came and sat next to me, and I thought it was because it was the only empty seat left in the room, but maybe you liked me at first. And then I remember being so tense, and then I just hear in the corner of my ear just little clips, when someone's clipping their nails. I can hear Eric do it upstairs all the time. Just clip, clip, clip. And I'm like, Is she clipping her nails?
AKA not serious at all.
Like, unserious. Like, the professor who is, like, our dear professor, Professor Smith, who is, like, this, like, regal, gentleman who's had years. He's, like, speaking.
Renowned
he's, like,
scholar, right?
renowned scholar. And he's, like, from this day on. I don't even know if he said that, but he said that in my head. He's, like, from this day on, you will whatever. I don't even know what people say the first day of these things. But I'm like, is she clipping her nails? But my favorite part about that was, like, that semester, I think we must have had, like, 3 or 4 classes together. Because I remember, like, from that first day, I went to the next class, and you were also there. I was like, oh, she's here. And then I went to the next class. I was like, oh, here she is again. I was like, I guess we're going to be friends.
Yes.
So
I forgot about that. We had, like, the whole slate.
oh, my God. I think we had one
together.
class, which was for my, like, other major that you were not in, but everything else you were in, which was great.
That makes a lot of sense, and it was probably very helpful for me, just, like, enjoying class more and wanting to talk about school outside of, like, classes, because otherwise I, like, just didn't tend to want to hang out with people that were my classes, right? At least outside of, like, my Black Studies major. The, like, general ed classes, I was like, oh no, these are not my people. I cannot.
It was like weirdly competitive.
It
like
was.
And it was weird because I mean, I don't know, like, I didn't know that college, like, when I came to college, I, like, didn't know it was supposed to be competitive. I was like, oh, you just, like, coming at your degree. I mean, like,
right,
shut up.
Same. It's like you did the competing part. I think that was my mindset. Like, we've done the competing part. We're here. Let's see what we can learn about the world, history, other people, where we're from, all of those things. Like,
some people were not there for that.
Yeah.
And, shout out to those people. Hope they're doing well.
Right. I'm sure they're thriving. I'm sure they are.
I do feel like that's, like, such a thing that, like, happens when you're like, oh, that is the attitude that people are coming with to, like, spaces is not the same one that I'm coming to,
That's a frequent, like, a recurring experience, definitely.
Yeah.
Right. And trying to figure out who is aligned.
For
Absolutely.
sure.
That's a very cute meet cute.
It is.
That's really sweet.
It is. And then the next year we were at UVA, we lived next to each other in our dorm situation.
Absolutely. If you are familiar with UVA, you've heard of the lawn, and if not, you don't need to be. Don't worry about it. It's really
shout out to the lawn.
Yeah, whoever's living on there now, I hope you're okay. I really do.
Yeah, I hope
you're probably not.
You're not. I mean, unless they've, like, added so many things that they probably can't, you're not.
Right. Can we make one plug? If you're visiting the University of Virginia, like, on a weekend or any day, do not knock on somebody's door to say hello. I know that they tell you it is okay. It is actually really inappropriate. Leave the kids alone.
It's not okay. Don't open the mail slot and scream into there. I had people do that. That's not okay.
Don't do it.
If someone's walking to the bathroom in their robe, don't point at them.
Look away and leave them alone.
We're not animals on safari. We're people who thought that this was going to be something different than it was.
We're sold a bill of goods. Realized too late that, the product was not what was advertised.
Oh my gosh. It was, wow. I still can't believe I did that.
Me either. Me either. We'll come back to that, I'm sure.
We'll come back to that. Things that I wish had gone differently.
That's like when the University of Virginia calls us and is like, why did you say that? They won't call us. They don't care. But when they do, I'm going to be like, I stand by everything we said. What I don't stand by is not living on the lawn.
Don't do it.
I don't stand by that.
Run. Run. Oh, we could do a whole episode on that. We could. Yeah. And then, what happened after that?
We lived next to each other. That's what
we lived
talking
next
about.
to each
that
other.
Was fun. We had a lot of good times.
It was fun. We had great times. We wrote our theses together, which was a terrible time.
A terrible time.
But, suffering has forged many friendships.
Have you ever looked at yours since?
No. And I wish that it didn't exist.
Like, I know there's a copy of it somewhere.
So I would pay to have it burned. I literally, like, I can't. I think that some of the ideas I had were good, but like
I cringe thinking about it. I cringe.
the execution, the fact that we had to present that to a room full, room full of people. It was our classmates. Like it actually wasn't that big a deal, but the fact that we had to do it at all was
terrifying.
Oh my goodness. But, you know, I do think that for some people it launched a brilliant scholarly career. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, I am not one of those people.
Yeah.
So
I had a scholastic career and then I left. I was just thinking about it though, like the kind of arc of our friendship, at least in PST terms, political social thought was, you know, starting with you maybe judging me a little bit for clipping my nails, very essential duties, and then it ended with us like holding hands while we were presenting because we were both nervous.
Beautiful.
So our like hands were kind of central to that little arc. That's kind of cute.
It is. It's beautiful. It is. I don't remember any part of that day. Did we eat?
Probably not. Not before. Definitely not. I don't think I slept. I was so nervous.
So nervous. So nervous. No.
But we presented, we got through it, and then we went off into the world. We went from living right next to each other
to living far away.
In New Orleans and Miami, far from like our home state and far from each other.
And far from each other, yeah. It's actually so interesting because our friendship, we have not lived in the same city for over 10 years. So the vast majority of our friendship has been apart.
Right, right. And this is the first time that we've been back. We're both in Central Time now, same time zone, I think.
Oh, yeah.
I guess, like, no, when you were in law school, when you were at Yale, we were back in both Eastern Time, but that feels like a little blip. We spent a lot of time even in different time zones.
Different time zones, yeah. The era when I was in LA and you were in Durham, that was the worst. That was the worst time difference. Like, I remember I would just, like, send you texts, and then I'd be like, oh, it's like midnight over there.
Mm-hmm. And likewise, I would wake up at like 6 a.m. and respond and be like, okay, she'll see it later.
Yeah.
Or I would be like, this is really juicy. I don't want to accidentally wake her up with this. So I'd be like waiting, like, okay, it's 8:30. Now I can press send.
The time zone math was brutal in that era.
And don't let if one of us was traveling to somewhere else on top of that.
Oh my gosh.
I think I was in Paris one time and I was like, I have no idea what time it is in LA, so I apologize for sending this ridiculous text about whatever I saw or thought at probably 2 a.m. in the morning, but I have to tell you this now.
Shout out to Paris, man. I love that for you.
It's so lovely. I need to go back.
It's beautiful. But yeah, I think that brings us solidly into the topic of our long distance era.
How do we
and
do it?
How we have spent most of our friendship long distance. So, I mean, thinking about it, you always see articles about how long distance friendships are hard, or like how to make a long distance friendship work. So what do you think about what makes long distance friendships hard?
I mean, there's so many things, right? Like we just talked about one of them, the time zones, right? Or if you're in a crossing time zones, you might be having different parts of the day simultaneously. Like one of you is just waking up, somebody else is at lunch, and that can be hard to kind of reconcile. But I really think that part of it is everybody just gets into their daily day-to-day routine, right? And it can be really easy to let connections fall to the wayside. Or you're like, oh, I'll follow up tonight. Or we can put rules and restrictions of oh, I'll wait till the weekend and then we can catch up. Or we imagine oh, it has to be this really formal big thing where we have a 3-hour FaceTime every week, which if that works, great. But I think it can be even more simple than that. But I think just in addition to the geographic and living life day to day that can get in the way or add complications, there's also the ways that we imagine friendship is supposed to look like that can make it difficult, or even just we don't imagine it, right? If you think about our social culture, we hear things and conversations about friendships, but it's not necessarily modeled. I would offer that or argue that we probably spend or see more images of romantic relationships and how those work in long distance, or family relationships, how those work long distance or up close, but we aren't a society or culture, at least in the U.S., that I think really invests a lot in friendships. I think that's starting to change, but traditionally that's just been oh, friends are nice, they can come and they can go, but in terms of investing and nurturing and a lifelong friendship, that's not something we have a lot of models for or see a lot of models of. And so I imagine it's also difficult because we can feel like, hey, I'm inventing the wheel. I'm trying to figure out how to do this thing and I want to do it right. But not knowing is hard and can be a barrier in its own, maybe. What do you think?
I think that's definitely part of it. Or I would add that if we do see models of it, they're sort of like shallow models. Like I think about all the TikTok videos that are like me and my long distance bestie. And some of them, I relate to, but some of them I'm like, oh my gosh, like really? Am I not like best friending hard enough that like this is not like what we do? So I think that there are also like really shallow, easily consumable models of what friendship is supposed to be out there. I also think that there is something about, especially in your 20s, like people are, and I think even more so in your 30s, people are just like in different life stages, right? I think that like, you and I were fortunate to be in grad school at the same time. But I think that it's hard when you have one friend who's like maybe working and one friend who is like in grad school, or one friend who is getting married and one friend who is on their, in their single life phase. So I think that can definitely make it hard to communicate, because it's like you're not only communicating across physical distance, but like also kind of that like life philosophical distance that you guys have between you. I also think people have talked about this, the friendships that we make when we are in school, whether that be like school in your childhood or in college, like there is kind of like a lockstep thing that's happening where everybody's kind of going through the same thing, right? Like we're all graduating at the same time, or we're all like in our senior year. And once that falls away, it's sort of like, well, what do we have in common now that we're not doing the exact same thing? So I think that in addition to everything you listed is, are some of the things that can make long distance friendships really hard.
Totally. As you were like talking about just kind of having or moving through different experiences at different times, I was thinking about the friendships that have maybe, it's not even fractured, but just kind of fizzled or fell apart. And I think that was like probably a big part of it. Like you're just kind of in different places, different non-geographic places, but looking for different things, or pieces of are coming together differently. And so it's just like, well, what do we have to talk about, right? And so one of the things I think in our friendship is like, we're at whatever spaces we've been in, I feel like we both had curiosity and been like really interested and invested in whatever was going on with the other person, and whether or not it was relevant to each other. And I have felt by you like being seen in that way, even if you weren't like in a Midwest tundra.
Shout out to the Midwest tundra.
Right.
Oh my gosh. I think that's so true. And I think that being curious about what the other person is going through is a really big thing, especially if it's different from what you're going through. I think especially like, I think that in your 20s you have a lot of different kind of relationships. Like there's a lot of different eras that you live through, and I think that there are times that you might not always like be aligned and like that's not what I'm like looking for right now, or something like that. So
For sure.
Yeah, and so I think it kind of bleeds into the next topic, which I think we've already talked about, but what do you think makes long distance friendships work?
I mean, I think one of the words we talked about was like intentionality, and it's like a want. I don't ever remember, maybe some of this goes to like the initial kind of foundations of the connection too. Or like any friendship, but like thinking about ours, but like you have to really want to talk to the people too, right? And that can be maybe even like a reflective tool if you're thinking about the friendships that are in your life and what's, where strength is coming from, what's lasting and what's not, right? And because sometimes there's probably value in knowing when to let go. But when I think about intentionality, I don't ever remember a time where I didn't want to talk to you, right? Like, or it felt really important to me, like whether it was getting your insight or just sharing something that was going on that has probably saved lives, like my own and others, just being able to be like, Anna, let me tell you, this thing just happened, right? But I think in addition to intentionality and like a want to, a will to, is just like consistency. I can't think of a time I haven't gotten like a birthday card or a birthday note from you, or even just like small things that I maybe wasn't even planning to celebrate, but you sent a little note like, hey, you're doing great. And it was like, oh, okay, good. That's my person. She knows, she sees me, whatever, right? And so that's a part of intentionality and like showing up right? Whether it's virtually, I think we experienced some of that in the pandemic. I guess that kind of goes with like, we're like mail people too. We send each other stuff, but showing up in whatever that looks like or feels like for you and your friend or friends is a big part of it.
We are big snail mail people. Let
Love
me
that
tell
for
you.
us.
We love snail mail. We always send each other cards, little packages. Just so funny. I mean, my dad was a postman for 25 years, so I have great faith in the USPS, even though sometimes it takes my cards 12 days to get to you.
You know they're going to
That's
come
okay.
eventually.
It's
That
gonna
also
come
reminds me
eventually.
like the first summer when we were moving though, I feel like we had like an email correspondence too,
We
where it'd be like
did.
every couple
We
of days he'd be like, here's
did.
the email rundown, because we were having these really long days,
Mm-hmm.
didn't necessarily have access to like phones where we could be easily texting each other short updates. But I think that speaks to intentionality too, like what being
Mm-hmm.
flexible and what communication can look like, but like consistently putting in the
Mm-hmm.
practice to share things too, and like lean into that
Mm-hmm.
vulnerability or just the fun of like keeping in touch.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point, because it's not that we have been extremely intentional about communicating and life updating and things like that, but it hasn't always looked the same. Like it really, like, I feel like in college we did a lot of like, this is gonna age us, the G chatting. Do people still G chat? Shout out to G chat.
G-Chat was clutch, yeah.
Shout out to G chat, just on my email, IMing people. I think maybe people, I don't know what people do now, but we did that for a while. Then we did emails, and then we had, we have the cards and the letters and things. So I do think that communication and intentionality can look different depending on where you are, what's going on. And I think that that is an essential part of making long distance friendships work.
Yeah, and what I'll say with that, and I don't know when the like switch happens or transition happens, but like the flexibility piece also means that like responsive time, like there's grace for response times too, right? Like I know if I send you something and you don't respond like that day or that hour, I know you're going to read it and respond eventually, right? Whether it's the next morning, and maybe that's the time zones taught us that or whatever, who knows? But it's like the delicate
Shout out
balance
to the
of
time zones.
all of their, much like their wisdom and their lessons, what they allow. But it's like the balance of like intentionality, knowing that there will be follow through, and also grace, because life happens, different things are going on, and so it's not a pressure, it's not an expectation
Right.
or a requirement. It's just trust that like this person will prioritize me and my experiences and like our communication stream, I guess.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think that, part of what you just said really reminds me of like something I love that you do is like, if I'm traveling, you'll text me and you'll be like, safe travels. And I'm like, that is so sweet, because it's like usually like, I don't know, I text, if I'm traveling without my husband, I'll text him like, oh, I'm like taking off. But it's like, it's nice to have someone who is like attuned to the things that you're doing in your life, that feels like embedded in your life in a way that they like, know that you are doing something like traveling, which like, for some people maybe that's not a big deal if you travel a lot for work or whatever, but I do think that that sort of like someone is here with me on the day-to-day that's not my romantic partner, like that feels super important, super life affirming, in a way that's hard to quantify, I would say.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that was so well said, right? You're just with me in the day to day. I know that like you're paying attention and honestly just wishing me well, right? Like,
Yeah.
of course, I think most of our friends, community, hopefully they wish us well, but I don't think we can ever verbalize that enough, right? Like travel days can be hard, right? And so it's just someone being like, I hope it's
Bad
a smooth
things
day.
can happen.
It can. But if it's not, like if it's a hectic security line in an airport, then there's someone that, is like, hey, I hope things settle down. I see you, and I hope, things go as well as they can. Yeah, I think it makes a difference. It's like just saying those things out loud. It's the little things that actually probably have a great impact in, like, again, nurturing that, like, trust and care.
Yeah, because when you are not living in the same city as somebody, right, you by default don't have accidental micro interactions with them, right? Like I don't like see you cutting your nails in meetings,
Right.
which shout out to you. I hope you still do that. I
Occasionally. They're
I
virtual,
feel
so
like
the
the
people don't know. It's
virtual
like under my
meeting space has been very important for you and your nail habit, and I love that for you. But
Absolutely.
like you have to create these moments of micro interaction with like people, across the country. I mean, you don't have to, but like I think for us, like that's been a big part of staying connected, right? Because if I only ever texted you and like huge things were happening, I feel like there's somewhat of like a disconnect there, right? Because it's like, oh, I know when her birthday is, and I know when she's moving, and I know when she changes jobs. Like that feels like it's not enough information to have like a full, rich friendship with somebody.
And as you were describing that, I think it's reminding ourselves that like the minor inconveniences of a day or life or just judgment,
Yeah.
whatever we're observing, are worthy or can be worthy of sharing, right? Like I know there's certainly been times where I've been like, why am I sharing this? I don't know. But then eventually you just get over that and it's like, oh my goodness, I saw this really gross thing in the gym. Are you going to have a view of that? No, but it like lets you know this was my gym experience. This was a part of my day, and unfortunately, probably for you, you get like a regular occurrence of the like horrible habits I see people practicing in shared fitness spaces. But to your point, it's just the micro thing that gives like an insight of what your friend is thinking about, like what they're wondering about, observing in the world, and what like what's happening.
Yeah,
In
I
their day.
saw this. I saw this post on social media, and it was like, if something happens to me, I'm immediately texting my bestie. What I see, she sees. We're going through this life together, and I thought that was so funny and so true because it's like, there are things that obviously I like. You tell your romantic partner, but there are things that only your best friend is going to understand or like want to hear about or even not want to hear about but is going to hear about, right? It's part of it.
Exactly. And there's just like the opinions too, and like valuing the opinions, learning to trust your own. What was I thinking? You were talking about posts, and there was one years ago that I saw that was like, well, my best friend said I was right, so forget the rest of you all. A little toxic, but also like sometimes you just need somebody in your corner that's like, absolutely, you're right. Go forth and conquer.
Right.
They've got it
And for
wrong,
me,
and so
it's not just
allowing
the
that
like,
space too.
oh, even if I'm dead wrong, they're gonna back me. Even if I change my mind, like spin on a dime, they're like, and what? Like,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. And we rotate next. Exactly. And sometimes it's like for my romantic partner, he has some questionable beliefs sometimes, like do the ginger ale or other drinks need to be
Yes.
organized in a particular way in the refrigerator? Yes, I believe so.
No.
He would say no, it can all just exist in there in whatever way. My bestie tells me, exactly, that's awful. That's wrong. That's wrong. And so I need someone to remind me that my refrigerator organization take is
You
right
gotta
so that I
stand
can
on
stand
it,
on
man.
it
It's not
and
giving
advocate for that in
luxury.
my
Like, I don't want to
household.
go in there and look for
You
the
know?
ginger ale.
It's not. Have to search, right? Like, why would the shorter beverages
No.
be behind the like tall one? That doesn't make
You
sense.
have to be
Doesn't make
able to
sense. You have to be
see.
able to see.
They are. Someone
That's
check
why
on
men are
them.
unwell. They are not thriving their life.
I do also think it's funny. I don't even know what you would call this, right? Like, but I remember it wasn't the most recent time that I visited you in North Carolina, but like maybe one of the other times. And we were at dinner with our partners. Shout out to Aiden and Eric. Maybe they'll be in the pod one day. Um, we were at dinner and we were
One day.
talking, and Aiden was saying that, oh, like on Saturdays we like to watch Captain America Civil War. And then I said, just out of instinct, I said, yeah, with the commercials. And you were like, yeah, with the commercials, it was so funny. We had never spoken about it. We had never, despite us texting 24 hours a day, we had never said to each other, hey, what are you watching? Oh, I'm watching this with the commercials. But it is such a strongly held belief that we both had, like randomly. That was phenomenal.
That was phenomenal because like we do have a lot of things in common. I think that reminds me of just like another favorite. Well, we'll be like doing something random and we realize we have a similar outfit or like we're in the same bag out, and it's like, oh my gosh, who knew? But yeah, in that moment, I just remember similarly feeling like, wait, talked about shows, movies, this movie before, but we've never talked about like this particular form of watching, let alone that we were like in a debate of sorts with our both of our partners about why the version with commercials was better and more relaxing. It is. You need
we'll
breaks.
Do a whole
Sometimes
podcast on that. Yeah.
But it definitely felt symmetry. Yeah, it felt like symmetrical.
And
I
think that's a way better way and succinct way of putting it than I said. But I think alignment and symmetry across space and time, I think, is something that makes long distance friendships work. And it doesn't have to be, telekinetic like that. But shout out to us.
Shout out to us. And I think we've already also touched on it as well, but like some of what we're hitting on is reciprocity, right? And so again, like it might not always be equal, just as we were talking about. There are different things going on that might shift your capacity or what you can do, whether it's traveling or, you get a little sick one day, so you can't respond as frequently. But it's like, again, trusting that the person is going to like reciprocate and match the energy that you're putting forth, and that makes it exciting to do it and like, or do the things, those gestures that we were talking about, but also just fun and like enjoyable, right? Because you know that someone's like remembering the things that you like, and then you remember theirs too, and you're both free to like celebrate and show up in that way too, because it doesn't feel like, oh, is this going to be read as too much, or will this be underappreciated or not appreciated?
I just think as you get older, I think that there's like always some kind of like anxiety about like showing up fully as you are in whatever in the spaces that you occupy, whether that be like grad school, work. And I think that it's so important in your friendships to feel like you have space to show up just exactly as you are. Because I think that, going back to our meet cute in college, like that's exactly sort of what forged our friendship, right? Is that we were two people who found themselves in a similar situation where we weren't necessarily the most comfortable, but, we allowed each other to show up as we are, which was hilarious and amazing, and I still look back and laugh at all of our antics, which maybe we'll get into one day.
I think they're phenomenal, and I would love to hear people's like similar or different antics and the things that they co-signed or questioned.
Yeah, shout out to people who are 21 in college just trying to make
sure you're
it
drinking
work,
water. We did not drink enough water. Whatever you're doing or not doing, drink more water.
Okay, how old were you when you got a water bottle? Do you remember, like, a reusable water bottle?
I feel like I had one at UVA, but I never remember filling it up. Like, I must have, because I would carry it around from time to time, but I have no memories of drinking it. I don't remember...
You remember it taking up space.
I don't remember, refilling it throughout the day. I don't know.
Do you remember, okay, at UVA, I think I had one too, because I remember seeing people with water bottles, and I was like, oh, I need to get one of those, because...
Do you remember those?
Yeah, okay. The Nalgene's, filthy. People carrying those are filthy. The one that I had, because I saw everybody had it, it started with the C,
Camelback.
The brand, but it had Camelback, okay? And you had to bite the straw to suck the water out. We were all in these classrooms biting a straw and sucking water out. I am
appalled. And 80% of the people were not cleaning the straws.
Not cleaning the bacteria. Like, I can't. It upsets me to no end. Like, I think these Stanley children don't know how good they have it, even though
too much.
They should also watch them.
Watch them, but also like don't pay $100 for a Stanley Cup or whatever people were doing with the like special collections.
People are doing a lot with those.
That is a little judgment. That's a hot take, perhaps, but like,
is it a hot take? I don't think it is. I think people think that, but they're too afraid because Stanley's with the straw have taken over the world.
I was about to have another for real hot take. I think that if there's fear, it's because of like Stanley's like predominant demographic.
Okay, I have thought this, and it's so funny because like if you like look at like the vintage Stanleys, they're like I feel like they're trying to sell them to like blue collar workers, like the lunchbox and like the coffee thermos. Like there was a specific image that they were putting together, and then for shout out to Stanley with the rebrand. They're like the pivot, the hard pivot.
They were like, those folks, they're only going to want to buy one, and they're going to want durability.
Exactly.
Or we can tap
Yeah.
into a market that'll buy like 3 or 4 of them.
3 or 4, 5 accessories for their children.
It's the pumpkin spice demographic. You know who you are?
It's the pumpkin spice demographic. Somebody at that marketing department really tapped into something very powerful, and shout out to them, because that's
Exactly.
wow.
Wow is the best word for it.
It's wild. It's wild
Lining
to
up.
see. Okay. Well, I think that we have covered a lot about long distance friendships, and I think obviously we're going to return to this topic over and over again as we progress and make more episodes, because there's a lot to cover. But would you like to move into our last segment here?
Yes, and before we do that, just if you're watching or you're listening on our comment section, wherever that is, let us know how you and your bestie, your long distance bestie, keep in touch, or maybe if y'all live in the same town too. What are some of your routines, some of your habits, some of the ways you show care for each other?
Some of the ways, you practice love for each other.
Like that.
All right. So the next segment is something that will be a recurring segment, and it's called Stand By It or Nah, where we revisit things that have happened in our past. Sorry, my dog just came up. Things that happened in our past, or things that have existed in the past, and we revisit whether we stand by it. And on today's edition, we have 2012 fashion. Now, Sarájanée, I'm gonna hit you with a couple iconic pieces from 2012 fashion, and we're gonna react to them.
I'm like thinking about whether or not I feel safe enough, not even safe, like have enough acceptance to
Safe is a good.
Maybe we
safe
post
is
something from that time, from that era. I don't know. Might have to sit with that.
Shout out to 2012. So the first one is infinity scarves. Do you stand by it?
I think no. I think I do not stand by the infinity scarf, and I just saw a picture of myself in one, and I'm just like, why is this thing just dangling around my neck? It's not keeping anything warm. Like,
yes. And it wasn't so much the scarf and the infinity of it. It was the wearing it with the tank top for me that really hurts me into my core when I think about it.
It was not right. It was not the right thing to do.
It wasn't right. And I always felt, okay, I don't even know. I suspect I have a large head, but I could never... I've always suspected this. I've never confirmed it. But I could never get it around the second time. So I always had to just wear it like a sad tire around me. I tried like twisting it. It didn't work for me. I don't stand by it.
They've got to go. And living in the cold now, it's like there's no function, right? As the more like the deeper I get into my 30s, I need form, but I also need function. And like infinity scarves did not offer enough function.
They did not. No, they did not.
Yes,
Choking hazard also in the worst
way. Not a good
way.
layer, just nothing. Most of them didn't have good patterns.
Just like, nothing. Chevron, save us. Save us. It wasn't, no.
They need to not come back. I protest. Whoever's somewhere in the fashion world thinking about, maybe infinity scarves. Absolutely not.
Okay, this next one is a 2-for-1. They often occur together. Bandage mini skirts with platform heels. I've never been so cold in my life.
I think I'm gonna stand by it. Even though I had ankle surgery, which is probably in part to like years of platform heels, I think I'm gonna stand by it. Also, the heels, because of the height, I'm the shortest person on both sides of my family, and so I think the platform heels like allowed me to just. I'm supposed to be a taller person. Maybe not supposed to, but I think I have tall person energy.
Tall person energy.
And so I think the platform heels, they let me lean into that. The bandage mini skirts are harder, but I got so much use out of them. Like I probably had a few of them that were just on a loop, and it was a time. I think I stand by it.
It was a time. You stand on it?
I stand by it. I would never wear it today, but I think I stand by it.
I just think about the miles that we must have walked.
Calves were never stronger.
Calves were never stronger. I don't remember getting a ride anywhere in college. I think I walked everywhere, or I took the bus, which shout out to the bus.
Bus with platform heels and a miniskirt. It was something.
Like, when I used to be a bus driver at UVA, shout out to the bus drivers, droves of women, young women, very young women, in these bandage miniskirts and platform heels, just tripping as they got onto the bus. And a lot of the buses were old, so they didn't have the thing where you could, like, so you know buses now, so that people with a wheelchair can get on, they they kneel. They have, like, they call it kneeling, where it's like they release pressure on one side of it and the bus can tilt so that there's like a ramp that they can go up. At the time we were at UVA, very few of the buses could do that. Only the brand new ones, which shout out to UVA for keeping buses from the 80s.
I guess that's sustainable.
For whatever reason.
Speaking of, do you still have, is it a CDL? Is yours like still current?
So I actually stopped driving senior year, but what happened was, so we used to get licensed through UVA. Like, they would, like, give us the bus driver test on grounds, and, like, we would get licensed. Like, we didn't have to go to the DMV. So what happened when we were there is the DMV audited UVA, and they determined that their testing methods were insufficient to properly license. So they unlicensed all the bus drivers. And they made us all go to the DMV to retake the CDL test. At which point I was like, well, I don't really, like, want to work here anymore. I'm kind of done with this. I want to focus on my thesis. And so I just didn't get retested. But so if you rode a bus at UVA between the years of 2008 and 2012, you should thank your lucky stars, because not all of us were out here.
That's a good reminder. If you can, though, go see your besties at work, because it is a great thing. One, you can hype them up potentially. Two, I've read, like, posts where it's like, oh, you can meet the people that they talk about. But when I think about you driving the bus, I only have one memory of riding your bus. And, like, we timed it. I knew when your shift was, where you were going to, like, what the route was, and I intentionally made sure I could get on the bus. But I think I could only stay on it for, like, a stop or two, because we both just kept laughing. Nobody said anything. But for some reason, it was really funny that you were driving the bus and I just got on it. And so I had to get off the bus, like, 2 stops later, because I couldn't stop laughing. I looked up, you were hysterically laughing, and it was like, okay, this is not insane. And the other people on this bus are like, what's happening? No idea.
Shout out to you for saving all those people on the bus, because I was really laughing so hard. I just, like, couldn't. It was so funny. I'm like, dang, I can't believe she's, like, watching me on this bus right now.
That's all I was doing. It's like, let me see. Yeah, go visit your besties at work, though. Tell them to join that Zoom meeting.
Oh my God.
Join that Zoom meeting virtually, whatever.
Join the Zoom meeting. Oh my God, no. You have to turn your camera off, though, because can you imagine facilitating a meeting and your bestie isn't just one of those squares and cackling at you?
Can't imagine.
That would be traumatic.
And, like, just sending you something in the Zoom chat that is off the chain. Like, can you believe they asked that?
Just reacting. Right. They're, like, doing the thumbs up. Yeah, that's funny. Should we do one more? The stand by it or not? Okay. Do you want to do one?
Oh my goodness. I mean, this is an easy one, I think, but let's just check. Are you standing by blazers as going out attire? Like, business professional blazers going out attire. Do you stand by it or not?
Okay. Here's the thing. I think that this one is, for me, 50-50. I think the blazers that we wore back then, those tight cropped peach/mint green blazers, those I do not stand by.
All sweaty.
All polyester from Wet Seal. Love Wet Seal. I know Wet Seal hated to see me coming, but not those. I will say, if you're going out to dinner in 2024, 2025, and you're doing, like, an oversized blazer moment, and maybe you hit a cocktail bar after, that's a cute blazer moment.
Okay.
That's cute.
But I think for, like, our setting and context, that was not the oversight. Like, there was no blazer that would work for like a college bar at 10 o'clock or later, let alone a club, which is where
we shouldn't have been anywhere wearing anything, doing any of that.
In the club it's just really tough.
It's really hard because, you know, those blazers from 2012, they were so tight. Like, I just remember, like, I couldn't bend my elbow. Yeah. You know what I'm talking?
Yes.
Just you spend the whole night like this.
So hot, like just so sweaty, and trying to cuff it to like get a little extra air. Hot. But no, just take the blazer off, sweetie.
I mean, good thing we were wearing mini skirts and platform heels, or there'd be no ventilation. It was a balance. I mean, not in the 25-degree Charlottesville.
It was a choice. Weather. That's really what it was. It was a choice.
It was a choice. It was a choice we made, and I could not imagine that at this
maybe
old
that's
age,
the like lesson for our 20-something counterparts. Remember that these are choices, and you can make other ones. You know, make the best choice for you.
Okay, I have one more. Stand by it or nah. From 2012, and it is our friendship.
Stand by it 10 toes down 100 times.
10 toes
over
down.
And over again.
Over and
That's
over
a great
again.
one. Did you say you stand by it too? Okay,
I did say that.
That's good.
Okay, guys. Thanks for listening. If you love this episode, share it with your long distance bestie. See you next week. I want to go back in time and tell little Sarájanée and Annacrizelda that in 15 years you will be doing a podcast.
I feel like they both be like,
so cute.
Okay, cool.